Good evening and a very warm welcome to this edition of The Big Debate. I'm your host, Igoma Gabriel. Glad that you can join us for this edition of the show. We're coming to you live from our studios on Ntinda 2 Road, and today we'll be looking at the race for East African Legislative Assembly. The East African Legislative Assembly is a sub-organ of the East African Community. It is an organ that is established under Article 49 of the treaty, and it is the legislative arm of the community. Each member state contributes members to the East African Legislative Assembly. The current members of the East African Legislative Assembly will end their term in December of this year, which means the countries are currently going through processes to elect the new representatives for their countries. Uganda is in that process, and in fact, even today, some of the members are being verified as they submitted their interest and then their documents. In the past, the NRM has basically determined who will represent Uganda. Going by what has so far, it looks like it will still be the case that the NRM will decide who will represent Uganda. The voters are the members of parliament, of the 11th parliament, and very soon those who have been verified as aspirants will seek a mandate from the members of the 11th parliament. Today we dig into whether the East African Legislative Assembly is relevant to the members, the ordinary people in the East African community, and how this process is going to go for Uganda to make sure that we have the very best going to represent our country. Before we go any further, let's meet our panelists for the big debate tonight.
Our panel tonight, Dr. Gerard Siranda Blacks is the Secretary General of the Democratic Party and East African Assembly candidate for the oldest party in Uganda. Dr. Siranda is a seasoned politician and scholar. Away from his political life and ideal aspirations, Dr. Siranda holds a philosophy of doctorate in gender, sexuality, human rights and conflicts from Open University, United Kingdom, a master's degree in gender, sexuality, human rights and forced migration from Land University, Stockholm. Dr. Siranda, who has always been a critic of the ruling national resistance movement, is also a scholar of ethics and development studies from Uganda Matters University. Siranda has previously served as Deputy Program Manager of the Refugee Law Project at Makerere University and Executive Director of Center for Democracy, Governance, Human Rights and Forced Migration. Moses Ategeka Brown is a Ugandan politician, journalist and Executive Director of Uganda Plastics Manufacturers Recyclers Association and an East African Legislative Assembly candidate. Ategeka, who is a former journalist, is known for his works in environmental conservation and waste management. Ategeka has previously worked as a radio journalist before venturing into public relations. He has previously served as the spokesperson of the Association of Ugandans living in the United Arab Emirates, before specializing in environmental issues. He has also served as the Executive Director of a demo plant PDN Plastic and President of the East African Plastic Recycling Association. Ategeka, who is in the ELA race as an independent candidate, says his aspirations are bringing the East African community to the people through common market, industrialization and green recycle technologies. Ronald Mivule is a politician, management consultant, regional integration activist and former East African legislative aspirant. Mivule is a scholar and chairperson emeritus of Uganda Management University, who has always advocated for involving the population more in the process of integrating East Africa. Mivule holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics, postgraduate diploma in business administration, postgraduate diploma in management and masters in management studies. Ronald Mivule is also a member of the ruling national resistance movement. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel tonight.
Gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the big debate.
Thank you so much, moderator. It's such a singular honor for me to be on this prestigious show, The Big Debate. Indeed, it's big because it has a huge following Today marks my maiden appearance. I'm very optimistic that we shall have fruitful deliberations. But just 2-3 things. One, you gave me a title that I've not achieved yet.
Which one, doctor?
The title of doctor. I'm not yet a doctor.
Being very prophetic here.
I'll get there, just being prophetic. But 2 other things. One, I want to commend the management of Seetv for setting up such a beautiful facility. This place is intimidatingly beautiful. And also allow me to observe the fact that this show is moderated by one of the best in the industry.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Moses, welcome.
Thank you, my brother. It's been a long time. I'm
yes,
happy to
we used to meet on other platforms.
Yes. I'm happy that I can find you here and enjoying this well-aerated studio. Wow, you made it. I was wondering how you dig out your information. This is credible. Credible, really.
Well, thank you.
So you really speak the truth about people, and that's a good way to begin it. And for our viewers, thank you for loving Seetv. Yeah, this is one of the programs I've been hearing from people. Always great time to listen to what is happening around the world, in our country. And I always see some serious people around. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Dear viewer, we just need to let you know that one of the panelists who should be joining us this evening, Dr. Gerard Siranda, the current Secretary General of the Democratic Party, who is also an aspirant, should be here, but he isn't because we just received word that he's just entered, for his verification. Some people are calling it vetting at Parliament. He still says he'll try and make it, but we will go ahead and have the discussion. If he's able to join us, we'll be glad to have him. But if not, we're in the able hands of these gentlemen. And I'd actually like to start with a very broad question here in relation to first the process. And I would like to start with Mr. Ategeka as an aspirant. Have you gone through all the processes?
That was alphabetical.
It was alphabetical, so advantage of being Ategeka.
And
yes.
I would say almost beginning to vie for the first spot. Someone will be coming first. And my name is always there, second, first, third. We have done the exercise today. We have gone through a house. This week has been a hassle for all of us, the candidates. But most of all, I want to give credit to the members of Parliament of this country. It's true, people portray them different in the public domain, but the truth is the time we have lived with them, this era when we're looking for votes, has been so extraordinary, unbelievable. You can't believe it. That you see it, you interact, they give you time, you listen. You know, an MP is somebody you would expect that to get 1 minute is very difficult because they always have a lot of busy schedules running into their system and all what is. But they have been so good, and I've told them, you are so great. This country has had one of the parliaments the government must have had. And looking at the whole system of IALA, and the processes involved. Well, in politics, they say, do not be duped by what is happening until the time you are extracted or extruded from the ballot box. You get? You don't predict, you don't just say it's all great, it's all okay, it's a bed of roses until you are out of that ballot box on the last day of election. But with all this, with all the gestures, we are anticipating a very great parliament soon, on 29th of this month. That is next week, around Thursday. They will be speaking for themselves, for the whole world. We know there has been procedures, systems, how to handle elections, how to manage this. Please go for this, go for this. But I just like it when they keep saying, no. We need to look for the best 9 for this country. That means they have put Uganda first. Uganda first. So for me, the procedures are okay. Actives under Parliament for this election, I appreciate them. And I continue to appreciate you until that last day when you'll make a statement through the election.
All right. And if I may come to you, it's a bit confusing, your stake in this particular, race. If you could just bring our viewers up to speed, because
bring
it seemed
them
like
up to
at some point you were an aspirant,
Yes.
then no longer.
Exactly what happened was, I'm a member of the NRM. So I think it was a month or like a month and a half ago, we were invited to express interest for this particular position. So we expressed interest, were invited to State House. We're not even given an opportunity to, express ourselves, what we intend to do for the community and all that. We simply introduced ourselves and that was it. So a number of our colleagues, we were quite a number, I think around 130, Tegeka was part of the group, we were more than 130. So a number of them, around 63 of the participants withdrew from the race and were informed that, go back home, we shall tell you on what SEC will have decided. But before we got home, we saw a letter on social media simply saying that, SEC has made a decision and it has ring-fenced the positions, the 6 positions. So they simply decided that the 6 incumbent members should go and serve their second and last term. Of course, that didn't augur well with us. We protested, we went to court, but we lost the case. So later we agreed. Bible says that all things work together for good. So we agreed that, okay, maybe it's not God's will that we should serve. It's not God's will that we should serve for this term. So we have given our colleagues an opportunity, the incumbent NRM, and it should be on record that we fully support them because we did everything in good faith. We absolutely did everything to replace them, but it didn't work. But again, I insist that whatever we did was in good faith. So since it didn't work, we are backing up our colleagues. Let them go and serve their second term. 2027, I'll be in the race. But it should be on record again that I am an integration activist. So I'll continue appearing on TV. I'll continue advocating for the integration of East Africa. So my journey is not yet done. I'm actually beginning my journey. So I think I've made it clear. Yeah, thank you.
All right, just to understand those processes a bit further and what happened, in the NRM. Mr. Tegeka, you belong to the NRM, but you're continuing in the race as an independent. How come?
Thank you for the question. It's just that you have to understand. To correct my brother, what he has just said, when we went to Entebbe to meet the president was categorically clear, and he stated that, you see, about East African Parliament, it is the NRM that decides. And even the mainstream opposition parties, which you would want to understand that are free and friendly, they all come to us and request for the support. If Saranda was here, I would just acknowledge what I'm saying. They all come and ask these members of parliament because they are the majority in this parliament. And there's no way you can fuse about and do things without the mainstream party in the parliament. The president said, no, if these people are our people, allow them to contest. But me, I can understand President Museveni in my own way, and I don't want to understand President Museveni like others. You get? Because the statements he made, these people are mine, don't stop them, let them do, let them stage up the competition, let them go ahead. But of course, the president is always also rounded up by the SEC, which also has personal interests. You have your interests, he has his interests. How you harmonize them, you know better. The president said, let them go. I went to Entebbe, and I informed the president that I had a lot of things I was doing in Kira municipality. Kira municipality is one of the constituencies that I've been standing in. I've stood in with my other colleague, Uganda, just for democracy reasons, to get the best out of leadership. And I assured him that I have projects which I want to do with them, which NRM can support. 2, I want this seat for particularly to effect on integration. I was not negotiating about which party. I was looking for my position in the ER race, which Iyala race is decided by members of parliament. So when my colleague went to court, we also said, yeah, it's okay, you can seek your justice. But always it's okay to seek justice, to have it, to not to have it. You still remain the same and the same system. It's not good to disown a system which you have come with all your life and just leave it like that. So for us, we are saying, and I was happy with the recent speaker's statements, that we are looking for the best 9 for this country to go and represent Uganda in Iyala. I speak for myself. I don't speak for anybody. I'm in this race, very sane, committed, devoted to pursue the interests of East Africa. I was happy yesterday when I went for nomination. The ghetto youth, led by their leader, Butcherman, he's called Walugi. He came to Parliament and said, no, Ategeka has been with us, just like the introduction you made. I've worked with a lot of ghetto people. These ghetto people must not be forgotten. We are looking at a bigger picture of integration, but when you're a leader at that helm, you must be focused also to look at what people need your service in that area.
All right.
Ugandans need the service.
But you're getting endorsements from people who are not voters. The voters
no, they
are
support
the
you. We
members
have
of...
people who support you in that parliament.
Okay.
You must, like for instance, I work with the Uganda manufacturers and Uganda plastic manufacturers. Kasita was supposed to be part of me. When we go to this regional parliament, whose interests are we spearheading? Whose interests? First of all, private sector foundation has interests in the region. The bigger business community has interests that we need to address in East Africa. Have you seen how Uganda can hardly access markets in this East African region, but all the other countries around Uganda have easy access here?
All right. Mr.
So
Tegeka, I'm going to come to you on the substantive issues, on what it is you plan to do if you made it successfully. But I'm mindful that Ronald told us here that visit to State House
for him,
just hold on. You're only given an opportunity to introduce yourselves, not to even say what your capabilities or plans were.
I should defend it in a manner that maybe the number was too much.
You were too many.
Too many. There were too many candidates. If you wanted to give them 5 minutes, you need, if we have 130 people, how many hours do you need? You need a whole night, whole day. So the president came and said, I know there are so many, but kindly speak about your qualifications, tell us who you are, and then we see what goes on. But I can also say it was not correct when candidates come and speak this way, and then the next day they're anticipating for another activity, the democratic process to continue, and then it is stopped, and then the other ones are declared. When they declared them, that's why it was wrong. But as I said, SEC already had its own positioning, which we cannot overrule, which we cannot just talk about like in corridors here, but that was them.
All right.
Me, I stood for my own principle. I told the president, even the president told me, bring my projects for Kira, I will support them. I told them, Your Excellency, I'm making sure I bring these projects after the election of Iyala, because my aim and mind was focused on elections.
As an Iyala member of parliament, how are you going to continue with projects of Kira?
It's possible. It is a community we live in. That's where my base is. And when I go to Iyala, I'm not going to be in Arusha to represent the people in Arusha. That's why Arusha has its own members of parliament. Our interests must be combined. The youth groups you're looking here, I'm talking about, you can be surprised why you bring them. But we are leaders at that level. We need to mainstream them into all our activities. If you're talking of integration, whom are you integrating? If you're talking of we're helping border openings, whom are you helping to open the borders? Then for what? Because I imagine when you get these youth, mobilize them. I told him, President Museveni, that you have been the architect of the industrial cottage. Industrial cottage must take toll here in this country and those other parts of the region. so that these people will have what to market. So if you open the borders, they are okay. No more disturbance, no more failures into Southern Sudan, into Kenya, into Congo. What will they take if you don't mobilize them? You must do two-way. It's a two-way traffic. Open the borders, open the market, streamline everything, but help the communities around you to get to know what they're supposed to go and do in these markets.
All right.
You open the markets, then you don't have products to put there. What? Then what?
All right. Mr. Mvule, two gentlemen present here. You were in the same meeting at State House. A decision was made. Two different reactions. You ended up in court with a number of other colleagues.
And he was right.
But we did that in good faith.
Taking your party to court?
Yeah, we did it in good faith. You know, we tried to exhaust, you know, all the options that were available.
The judge says you did not. The
I
judge
must be
says
honest
you
with
did
you. I
exhaust
must be
those
honest
processes.
must be honest with you. We felt deprived of our right to contest, because when you read the NRM Constitution, it gives every member an opportunity to contest for every available position. But it seems the Central Executive Committee had a predetermined position. And I think it has been the precedent that, you know, whoever goes to Yala serves the 2 terms, and that's it, because Yala has term limits. It's just you have to do 2 terms and that's it. You can't, you know, go for another term. But you see, our argument was, it's okay, the precedent can be, but let these members first go through an election. It should not be a selection, rather it should be an election. But now we are discussing, you know, we are doing a postmortem. We are doing a postmortem of something that already happened and we cannot change it. So at some point, you succumb to the pressure and you really accept that, you know, this time I've not been favored. Let me wait for the 5 years to come.
All right.
Because we as the NRM, we have 6 slots. And if the Central Executive Committee says that these 6 slots have been ring-fenced. Now, running as an independent, you know, I cannot discourage my colleague from running as an independent. But me, I'm pure NRM. as cracking a joke with some of my friends and as telling them that even when you cut my blood, it's not
yellow.
It's yellow, it's not red. So to me, I think it would be deception coming out to say that I am an independent. I'm not independent. I have a party where I belong.
Mr. Tegeka, are you being deceptive to say that?
I don't want to challenge my brother. I don't want to challenge him on air, but I think you're listening. When he went there, he didn't want selection.
He wanted an election.
Which didn't take place.
Which he later...
And I conceded.
Okay, now I ask him on air before the viewers, what did you eat to accept? Okay, not eat. Ah, that's wrong. I withdraw.
No,
what
okay.
convinced you?
What convinced me is...
One minute. Let me finish it all. What convinced you that actually even going to court for you was wrong?
No, going to court was not wrong.
You mean was a mess for you to
no,
go to court?
No, it was not wrong. But the truth of the matter is, as a leader, as a politician, you need to know at what point do I concede. If you have gone to court and you've lost the case, you've expressed interest and you've not been given an opportunity, you need to know at what point you have to concede.
You should consider as a person.
That's my personal opinion.
As a person.
Ategeka is entitled to his opinion.
Yeah,
and
very good.
He's
Very
entitled,
good. Very good.
Because, I mean, we have different strategies. But according to me, I think after, trying all possible positions and they have not worked out.
Actually,
the best thing for me to do, if you can permit me to submit, the best thing for me to do is now to succumb to the pressure, okay, concede that, the opportunity is not there for me. And the best thing to do as an NRM member now is to support my 6 colleagues. And in fact, you've seen me in parliament oftentimes, and I'm campaigning for them. Let them go and serve. 5 years is just around the corner. 5 years is just, like tomorrow.
That is a choice you
have made. Before the 5 years will be done, and there will be 6 slots for us. So I've made a decision, and I'm not trying to convince him to do the same. No, I've made my decision. Let me submit. Let these gentlemen and ladies serve their second and last term. In 2027, there will be 6 free slots, and we shall contest for them. Okay, but that is my personal opinion.
Mr.
I'm
Iguma,
not trying to lure him
Mr.
to,
Iguma,
you know,
you're
take
not
my
supposed
opinion.
to lure a mature person. There's nothing you can do to a mature person. Mr. Iguma, I want to read this.
Let me end this.
Yes,
let me end with this.
Yes,
The most important thing now, the most important
Point of
thing now.
information.
No, just a second, we're going to come to you.
The most important thing, and why I'm on this show for today, is we need to delve the nitty-gritties of the East African Legislative Assembly. It benefited the common man.
And we're actually going to get there.
Because now we are simply doing that. We are simply rushing you. We are doing
Gentlemen,
that postmortem.
yes, and we're going to get there.
Yes.
We're going to get there. But you see, for many of these things, the process is as important as the final product.
That's very true.
And that is why there is a treaty. There actually, each country comes up with rules on how to get these members there. And Uganda has been taken to court because at a certain point did not conform. Rules had to be amended accordingly. So we've got to make sure that the process is right for, you know, the to also be right. Otherwise, you know, we will keep, we'll have endless litigation.
Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. I totally agree with you. That's why we went to court to challenge the process. And the judge told us, please, if you can't breathe within the NRM, find somewhere else to go. You would rather, because this is what the judge said, that if it's on record, that if you can't breathe within the NRM, find somewhere else to go.
Yes.
So we have no option. We just have to.
It's usually reading his judgments are quite interesting. But before you give us that information, Mr. Tegeka, had you breathed within the NRM?
No. I wasn't into the matters of. I stood on my grounds. For those who have followed my situation into Iyala, when you come, you must be focused. You must have a vision of putting the leg here. The other time you're here. Now here you're in court. Here you're coming. You're conceding. It confuses the public.
You were there as NRM. Now you're there.
As independent. There were more than candidates. Independence in State House on that.
Oh, so when you went to State House,
when the NRM went,
your mind up to be independent?
Yes, independents were there, and I was.
I think he's not being honest. My colleague,
who is independent, there are those other ones I can't mention here. They were all independent and were seeking vote on that ground. Because for us, when they came, they took to court, and then we said, court is not a solution. Court will not serve us the purpose. Now, I want to assure you where we're getting astray on this debate, on this talk. This is a big debate. Let me tell you, in elections, in politics, we have campaigning agents. So don't be surprised if Mr. Mvule is campaigning for the 6th NRM.
I am.
Put him
am.
very good. So what do you expect him to say before the viewers?
No, he has.
So for him, he will demoralize those who are in it and who are focused. but for him, that is for him.
Yes.
Now, I want to tell him that before you even decide to say ring fencing is a good for Uganda.
Did I say that?
It came from you. You say it's good. 5 years, we give them 5 years. You must be for giving the country the best leadership. That's what I can say, and that's what I insist on. Even if you wake up in the morning, in the middle of the night and ask me, I'll tell you the same. Now, Iyala Act 2011, Section 7, subsection 1, it stipulates it clearly. It is MPs who will view on behalf of the population of that country and decide for the best leadership. Why are we rushing? I've been asking them on my other. Why are you showing some little bit cases of fear, tension? When tension mounts on them, you hear them creating situations. They bring lists. So and so has been passed before the election date. There is a lot of bit fear, tension that they cannot withstand the pressure now. But me, I have vested my trust in the National Parliament of Uganda that on the 20th of this month, they are coming to make a statement for Ugandans. We don't make leaders from Korea on behalf of the larger population.
In 2017, before that election happened, there was a list of 9 that were expected to become the 9 representatives for Uganda. And say this, you know, with all confidence. Those are the 9 that went to Iyala. Only one has changed because one of the members unfortunately passed away. So what makes you think it's going to be any different this time round? If it could be predicted
these have been
before.
different parliaments, and we're sitting with different categories of people. And for your own information, today the Parliament of Uganda has a little bit new brains, fresh brains in that house. So please give them the chance to decide on their own. I don't think it is correct to be on air here trying to tell the people who are there, who are voters, that our parliament has been decided for. Why? You are undermining you are undermining
we have
the
already,
credibility of this
but
parliament.
we've already said that 6 have been ring-fenced
It's okay. Ring fenced by who?
by the NRM.
It's okay.
That in your first submission you stated are
So
the
why
majority.
why don't you declare
And
them?
therefore, for anybody
So why
to make
don't-
it through
why
has
don't
to have the backing of the NRM, which
It
basically
is okay.
means
We are
those
saying
6
this,
are already going through.
but you know, the moment you put an election, respect it. And we are in an election process.
Yes, we are.
So why are you jumping shoes that ring first declared? What happens then? What is the purpose of the election? Respect the process. Respect the process. It is an election. Where an MP will wake up in the morning, wash the face, put on his suit, get into the ballot box. Before even the ballot box, listen to all these candidates who have been verified today. Listen to, no, Mr. Guma, I cannot miss this candidate. I have seen situations recently in Gololo here, the same parliament. When you brought this candidate, they listened to them, the packaging was different, and they took the best package. So respect the MPs. It's very unfortunate you come on air and start disrespecting them on air. Why do you decide for MPs? Are they babies? Give them some time. Give them the opportunity to decide for the Uganda they are serving. I think it is very bad to bring an era like this one, drift it into 2017. 2017 was 2017. These are eras past. And now we're in present situation. These people look at our challenges of society different. And I respect and I know the MPs will do the best.
Just so I understand, are you saying it's possible that the MPs can throw
100%
out,
possible.
can throw out some of the 6?
100%. These 6 are not, it's not in blue ink. It is still that they have to come and speak to the MPs on the podium, tell them what they have not done, what they think they are going to do, and when they listen to the freshers on the podium, these MPs will do the right thing.
All right.
Please give them the respect.
All right. Since you maintain being
That is
you've
my
stayed
understanding.
yes, you've stayed a candidate in the race. Part of what we've seen is the 6 are doing everything together. They started with joint statements. They went for their nomination together. They went for their verification together, despite the fact that there was alphabetical order. What does this mean for a candidate like you?
But when they come to declare what they're going to do in the Iyala and speaking to the Electoral College, they will come one by one, and they will be chosen one by one. They will be on the list of the of the other candidates, and the MP will decide, this one spoke well. They will not speak as a group. Let them come and speak as a group before the parliament. I can understand you then. Can they make their speech one?
Can I say?
They will come.
Can I say something?
I want to conclude.
Yes.
They will
Conclude
come.
that, yes.
Assist. Even today. I should not speak what happened today.
Why? As long as it happened where there were cameras, it's okay. Because
it was off camera. It was off camera.
Okay, if it was off camera, then
Let me say something. Yuma.
yes, sir.
And please forgive me by referring to you by your
No,
your
it's
surname.
very well.
Now,
yes.
there are 3 English words. One is pessimistic, optimistic, but there's being pragmatic. In this issue, I don't want to either be optimistic or pessimistic, but let me be pragmatic, let me be real. Now, this is what happened. Like I told you, we expressed interest, went to State House. We are quite a number, 130. Some people withdrew from the race. The Central Executive Committee decided to ring fence the 6 positions. We did everything we could, went to court with. Now, step two. Step two, what happened was the NRM called for a caucus. And remember, they are the majority. There are more than 300 in that house. They can make any decision. So they go to Kololo in the NRM caucus, and they unanimously agree that they are going to support the six candidates.
Yes.
Then they're also going to support candidates from the friendly political parties and one independent.
Yes.
You're following me?
Yes.
There was no dissenting voice.
So Dr. Siranda, Honorable Ebil, then an
and
independent.
Gemma.
Yes.
They said they would choose 2 out of the 3 and 1 independent. Now, it would be foolhardy for me to think that people and unanimously agreed that they are going to support the 6. And these people, listen, and these people are the majority. Listen, that's why I'm saying that let's be pragmatic, let's be real. Okay? It's good to have faith. I'm a Christian, I have faith, anything can happen. But let's be real in this
faith in court.
No, I don't.
You lost the faith.
But he says
he's not granting me time.
Actually, I don't know.
No, but he says he took the judgment in good,
he's trying to be nice.
And he's waiting for 2020.
Let me tell you something.
You have given him all the time. You've given him more than 40 minutes to speak.
Now,
he's even denying me.
Let me tell you what is escaping before the camera.
No,
this
gentleman should have hosted you alone.
You should have hosted him alone. Is supposed to face the costs of court.
No
why
problem.
He took to court? He's supposed to pay.
So that's okay.
So you can
okay.
Let me make my submission.
Let him try to make a negative statement. Tomorrow police will be on his door.
Let him finish.
I can understand him now.
But Mr. Ategeka, I also understand that for the position you're in, you're careful not to agitate the MPs because they are the voters. And therefore, you will say all things good about the 11th Parliament, even when you know that there are certain things that they're doing wrong in relation to this process. Because you know, and we've seen it, that where a person criticizes them, once they stand in to try and ask for that vote, the MPs retaliate.
Well, I don't know about that. In my understanding, it's different now. Because for me, I'm dealing with the same parliament that you're talking about. I've had a time, we had dined, had lunch, we have made fields together. I've moved to some fields where I've met some MPs in their constituencies. They are friendly at least. That's one thing to appreciate. What will happen in the box is just because I'm telling my brothers, well, they have to defend the NRM because usually they have to pay a hefty budget because if the court bailiffs come storming their homes because of taking NRM to court, it will be terrible. I know how much. Do you want me to say it on air? Can I say it on air? How much?
He's diverting us from the issues.
These MOPs are very good.
It's been an unfortunate debate for me.
Now we can divert from this topic of one person campaigning for the others and one talking for himself. Let's go on the bigger picture.
But no one has campaigned for anybody here. And yes, even as we get to the bigger picture, and I'd like to start with you, Mr. Mugule. When you look at this cycle, it's unfortunate that whenever we go through this cycle, Uganda ends up looking strange because we seem to do it very differently from the rest of the countries. And yet we all go to that same East African Legislative Assembly, we all go to that community and say we're playing by the same rules. In your view, the way we are handling the process right now, does it affect, the image of Uganda and what we'll later do as a country, at the assembly?
Thank you so much. Now, you see, we have different shades of opinion in the House. We have different political parties and all that, and most likely we shall,
we are
supposed
to.
That's the idea.
We are supposed to, but
situation.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, what I think is the moment we get in African Legislative Assembly, our party cards remain at the airport. The moment you step in Arusha, you cease to be independent, you cease to be UPC, you cease to be NRM, you become Ugandan. In fact, if anybody chose to attack Uganda at that level, you would defend it.
They're referred to as Uganda's representatives.
You're actually a diplomat in that country. So your political differences stop here. So I don't think that the process we are going through ultimately affects the way we look in Arusha. But as finishing a point, and I don't want to sound like I'm discouraging my colleague, because
and you've actually said it
I
maybe
don't
3 or 4 times.
And,
I don't
moderator.
I hope you can hear that he's saying.
Moderator,
He's not
correct
trying
me.
to
But he's not
discourage
he's
you.
There
not
is no way
permitting
you
me time
can
to say
discourage
anything.
Okay.
a person who's determined,
Okay.
a person who has made his path
Yes.
and moved ahead
Okay.
of what you
Yes,
are.
but
But
for,
let me
but for
finish.
clarity,
Let me-
he's saying that the points he's making are in no way meant
For his,
to discourage you.
For him.
I
Yes.
have nothing against him. I don't mean to discourage him. And I don't want to sound like I'm condescending. No. This is honest opinion. And I was taking you through the process. The 6 went through the Central Executive Committee. The 6 positions were ring-fenced. We went to court. We lost the battle in court.
Why?
NRM caucus calls for a meeting in Colorado. They unanimously agree.
Repetition.
Let me repeat myself because I want to make a point. They unanimously agree that they are going to support the 6.
Yes.
It would be a mistake for me, okay, to go ahead and contest against these things.
Why did you go to court?
Listen, I just needed to know that at some point,
serious,
you know, it has not
Be
worked for
serious
me.
before the camera.
Let
Why
me
did you
simply,
go to court?
let
Why
me
did you go to
simply-
court?
Could you allow him to finish?
Let me
his submission?
simply support my colleagues, because you see, me and the 6, we are not enemies. Actually, all the 6 are my friends, okay? So since they have gone through, the best I can do now is to wish them well. Let me support them. Let me campaign for them. Let them go and serve their last term. 2027, I'll be here. And I'm still a young man. That's the advantage that I have. 5 years from now, I'll still be young and I'll still be in position to serve. So at some point, you just need to know your cutoff point. I think I've made that clear. So now, going back to the East African Legislative Assembly, there are things we need to look at. And one philosopher once said that if you want to understand the situation that you're in, or if you want to predict the future, it's very paramount that you look back where you have come from. If you look at the history of the East African community, and because of time, I may not delve into all the details, but I can pick a few nuggets. I can skip 1963 and start with 1967. 1967, that's when we signed the first East African Treaty, East African Community Treaty. That was 1967. We had only 3 countries, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. That treaty, that community lasted for a period of 10 years. It collapsed, I think, in 1977. But it had achieved a number of milestones, so many beautiful things. You know that we had an airline, East African Airline. We had the railway, East African Railway. We had a refinery, the East African Refinery. We had the Virus Institute you see in Entebbe was collectively owned by the East African community, and so many other things.
Each country particularly had,
yes.
Yes.
And before the breakdown of the currency board, we had a currency board. Currency board was like the central bank of East Africa. Before its breakdown in 1968, we're using the East African shilling. So the things we are talking about now, the things we want to achieve, we had achieved them earlier in the first integration of 1967 to 1977. But we need to ask ourselves, then why did that community fail? A man who I consider to be the first father of the region, you see, we have a new father of the region. First
as
father.
Announced,
But
the recent
yes, but the very
inauguration,
first father of the region, Mariam Julius Nyerere, picked out 2. One of them, he said, we have behind. And in his own words, he said that the entire process leader-led. It was not people-led. The people had been left behind. Down the road, and we seem to repeat the same mistakes. If I go to your village where you come from and I mention Yala and I mention, common market protocol, for example, alien to them. So we have not involved the people, and this is what I'm urging my colleagues at the moment you get to Arusha. One of the things you have to work on is let's bring the community nearer to the people. Unless the people feel this community, it will remain a facade. What do we have to do? Because I don't usually love presenting a challenge and I do not propose solutions. Our colleague, when they go to Arusha, quarterly in a year, and their meetings are usually 2 weeks.
If I may, I know that you're building that point, and it's good to give the solution. But we will get to a point where we give solutions to the problems. You said the issues were two.
Yes.
You stated
leading
the people behind.
Yes.
And the second?
The second one was the strong sense of nationalism. We have a strong sense of nationalism in East Africa. Kenyan, I am Ugandan, you're Tanzanian. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere described that sense of nationalism, that strong sense of nationalism. He described it as being obsolete, outdated, meaningless, and he said it is dangerous. It is dangerous. And you see these trade wars we are having, I know we shall get to the trade wars. The trade wars we are having are mainly because of that strong nationalism. This milk is Ugandan, and that is wrong. We should be looking at the milk as East African. This maize, these eggs are Ugandan, of Ugandan origin. That is wrong. These products should be seen as East African. So if we do not address these two, and I don't know whether endeavors have been made to address these two issues. One, the involvement of the people. Two, that strong sense of nationalism.
Okay.
If we don't do those two,
right,
then we are doomed to fail.
All right. We're actually going to get there. And Mr. Ategeka, very briefly on your view on why the community is not doing as well as it should. And you will know that you will remember that when the community was in the second phase, in the second life of the East African community, many positive things were said. And the leaders said, this time, this time. Where did it, in your view, where did it miss it? Is it the two issues that Mwalimu Julius Nyerere pointed out at that time, or is there something else responsible for where we're at right now?
To begin with, I just want to build my understanding on it as a conflict of interests. Conflict of interest has been key in the failure of the community. It stems from even when the first people started thinking of creating a community for East Africa. You look at the brothers like Obote, they all tried it with the counterparts. And you remember actually the reason why some of the regimes today are surviving was partly historically because of the failure to understand in this region. The member states, the head of states, did not take it on upon themselves to make sure that they pattern strongly and create a visionary act of what they intended. In the past, I even remember there's that time when Amini came and questioned and said, "Hi, you people, we are in East Africa. How can Kenya be bigger than Uganda here? How can it? The size of Kenya is bigger than. I am the king."
You're talking about land size here.
Yes. This is the time actually when you hear of Mijingo problem. Mijingo started just in terms of Amin. When he said, declare at one point, say, just extend our boundaries of Uganda across Mijingo and pull from Kenya. It created a very big misunderstanding. You get conflict of interest, trying to show that I am powerful. And it happens today, by the way. It happens still today. It comes in different fashion, different ways, not like that time. Now, that time it failed because in the beginning that time...
So not really a conflict of interest, but conflicting interests.
Conflicting interests. Heads of states thinking this way, in a country, leadership, administrative structures, failing to adhere by the protocols that have been understood. Those times it was just verbal, but this time round we have protocols signed. We have 4 protocols which are supposed to spearhead the full integration of East Africa. If I can just go fast, you know that we have customs union, we have common market, and we have political common currency as the next, and monetary union.
The monetary union.
Monetary union, common currency, monetary union is the same story. But the last of it all is supposed to be the political federation, which sums it all. And I have told my colleagues, even if those our local people in the village say, even if you dance on this needle, Yeah, I need this one for
Sowing.
sowing. You cannot achieve the political federation which we hope, we want, the common currency or the monetary union, unless the customs union, the common market are worked on. The failure of this common customs union working is emanating from the conflicting interests that we have in the region. Kenya has rejected your milk. Zambia has accepted the same milk. What does it mean? Kenya, what happened with Kenya in that time? Kenya is able to bring in all its merchandise, all the goods and services, I can say, in Uganda. But this is not the same liberties the Ugandans have when you're crossing the border to Kenya. You are curtailed, stopped, and asked, please keep this distance. Don't extend to this side. Because here you have no rights. But East African community is about all of us.
Okay.
And now, I would like you to understand this very well. Now, the issue of our capacities are different. I regard this Kenyan issue, economy being seen as a more boosted one, is the same as Britain. You look at Britain in Europe, how it was the king, and when coming out was a bigger problem. That's what we're saying. When we're coming in a community like this, we want all these countries to have inside them the total cooperation spirit. Total cooperation spirit is lacking. Some countries are trying to cooperate, some are lagging behind. Oh, some are dodging the system. And Kenya, on record, Uganda and Tanzania have tried to do the best for this integration. But what about these other countries where you still feel conflicts going on? In southern Sudan, you will take your merchandise, someone to pay you must have to put your broad daylight. No one asks them. Crossing these customs, you are supposed to ask, you are asked different taxes, same goods coming from Kenya to your country, same different taxes. It becomes very different. Even the taxational policies are supposed to be uniform for all these countries. I've been on the technical team of Uganda National Bureau of Standards. I liked it and I want to recommend it on air. Allow me to do this because it shows some real spirit of integration which is needed. Uganda National Bureau of Standards, when they were regulating the plastic sector and these other merchandise, they had to first call all the 5 countries, put them on Zoom and say, here in Uganda, we have this standard. In Kenya, what is your standard? In Tanzania, what is your standard? Now, it comes to the same parliaments. They must emulate this. If you're a Kenyan parliament, you're passing something. In Tanzania, you must visit the East African system, protocols, sets that are, the set pace. If you're taxing a commodity X in Uganda, what is the same tax in Kenya? Because you're going to be dealing in the same market, you need to be competing at the same level. Right. If we can't do that, we are still far away from achievement.
Gentlemen, we need to take a break at this point, but we definitely continue by going deeper in the issues that we've just started talking about, what the real issues are for the East African community and whether the people are making this journey with the leaders. Stay tuned because after this break, we continue the debate.
This is Seetv. Don't blink.
Seetv is now on StarTimes. You can now catch all your favorite programs, our daily comprehensive news bulletins, and so much more on StarTimes channel number 248. Stay tuned for a world of endless possibilities. Seetv. Don't blink.
times in life, we spend all the time trying to live other people's life. And along the way, we lose who we are by copying what other people are doing in their relationship.
You see, from the last time I met your sister, I've not spent a day or a minute without thinking about her.
It's a good surprise on a Monday. This is nice.
So you and him are
We're just friends.
Wow.
Come on.
just friends.
You either tell me where you're from or you go back to where you've been. Thinking it would work out for us, but yet to find out that's not who we are after experiencing a great disappointment.
She's in love with some other man, so classy, a gentleman, not bulldogs like you.
These are the mistakes girls do.
Now showing on Seetv. Don't blink. This is Seetv. Don't blink.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you for staying with us here on The Big Debate. I'm your host, Igoma Gabriel. Today we're looking at the journey to the East African Legislative Assembly. The term of the current legislators is coming to an end, and Uganda, like the other East African countries, are going through processes electing their next representatives to the East African Legislative Assembly. Each country has 9 representatives, and what has happened in Uganda, a unique thing is that 6 positions have been ring-fenced for the NRM. 2, if things go as planned, will go to the so-called friendly opposition forces, 1 to an independent. Parliament was today verifying the documents of the aspirants, and by the time we came on air, Parliament was still doing that verification, and it is for that reason that one of our guests who was supposed to be on the show has not made it, but he said that if he finishes his processes at Parliament, he'll still make his journey here and contribute to the discussion. But our 2 guests who have made it here in studio, Mr. Ronald Mivule, he's a regional integration activist. You preferred to do as that, and he had intentions of, standing in this election under the NRM, but now for 2027.
Which is around the corner.
Which is around the corner. And you added you're young and you'll still be young at that time. Our other guest, Mr. Moses Ategeka, he is an aspirant. He went through the processes. Today he's waiting for the final word and the final from Parliament. He was in attendance that meeting at State House, but in this race he is an independent candidate. Gentlemen, just before we wait for the break, we had segued into talking about the issues of the East African the East African community broadly, but the East African Legislative Assembly as a key organ in the community. And as Mr. Tegeka made his submission, you did refer to what some people like to call the pillars, which are the customs union, the common market, the monetary union, and political federation. And you, Mr. Mivule, you didn't get to talk about those, but in your view, how are we doing with yes, you talked about the problem of bringing the people on board, but with the pillars, which are meant to guide us on how we proceed as the East African community. How are we doing on those?
That's a very beautiful question. Now, he has mentioned the 4, but let me start from the first, customs union. And what does it mean? What is entailed? When we talk about the customs union, it means that we should have a common external tariff for all the member states. What does it mean having a common external tariff? That if you're importing goods from a non-member state, China, Europe, wherever, you're subjected to the same tariff. And that is meant to achieve two things. One, that there shouldn't be any country of preference. You will not say, let me import through Uganda, let me import through Kenya or Tanzania. Because, the tariff is the same. Number two, that tariff can be used as a prohibitive measure for some of the goods that are produced domestically. If, for example, you're talking about the textile, okay? If you're talking about clothes and we have textile industries here and we want to protect them, so that means we shall levy a higher tariff, common external tariff, and make it difficult for importers to bring those items here. Why? To protect our industries. But it has its shortfalls. Why? We have seen member countries, and I don't want to mention names, we have seen now member countries engaging in bilateral trade agreements with non-member countries.
Right.
For example, country A in East Africa signs a bilateral agreement with China to import maybe phones. I'm just giving a fictitious example.
But there are real examples. Uganda has bilateral agreements, for example, with the Netherlands.
So that means that you're going to import goods at either zero tariff or at a tariff that is lower than the common external tariff. And now that contravenes with the customs unions protocol that we signed in, was it 2010, 2005? That's one challenge with the. Now let's come to the common market protocol. We signed the common market protocol in 2010.
Just so that we don't go back and forth.
Yes.
And, if we could just hold it there on the customs union, and if I could get your way in, Mr. Ategeka, on the the customs union. Do you see it the way he's seeing it? For example, there's a period where Ugandans had become very clever, and they wanted to get particular types of cars, and it seemed to be cheaper to get them through
other
countries. Yes, the South Sudan.
And they're doing it. They're doing it.
That's very correct. Even on the Lake Victoria is doing a lot of job for that. Those who avoid the tariffs, who want to avoid all these barriers, the bottlenecks along these border posts. At the end of the day, I've been preaching this in different. I want to assure you that right now we are facing a very biggest challenge in the country in Uganda. There are certain things we do. When we do them, we make the country lose more. Especially when you make a tax very high. It means technically in business you're going to attract defaulters. Two, you're going to have a lot of black market business in that area of where the tax is too big. So usually it's been terrible. Like recently I saw the other tax which has been passed by Parliament, and it was closing smaller industries, giving a boost to the bigger industries of plastic. Meaning that the smaller factory was slated to close down. They have even already started closing down their recycling facilities. If you kill recycling in a country like Uganda, that's very dangerous. Why? Because these are the people who have been charged with collecting all plastic.
Forgive me for interjecting. Forgive me for interjecting.
I'm trying to give an example.
I agree with him, but we are deviating from the point.
No. I'm giving you an
example. We are deviating from the point because we are talking about the common external tariff in relation
and I'm
to the
talking
customs.
about tariffs now, sort of that.
The taxes you're talking about are
these are internal.
These are internal.
But they also affect the border posts. Why? Because even the same goods are traded in all these markets.
That is true, but I don't want us to lose the flow. And you had brought a very beautiful example that we have seen people who are now importing cars through Sudan.
Because
why? Because it is cheaper.
It is cheaper because of taxes, right?
Okay, let me make this point so that we don't lose the flow. That means that Sudan, I didn't want to mention names, that means that Sudan has contravened the customs union. It is not levying the common external tariff. And we have seen other countries, like I was stating earlier, I didn't want to say Kenya or Uganda entering into a bilateral agreement with the Netherlands, and maybe a certain country X importing goods from a different country, but at not following the set common external tariff. And why is that happening? I think this is a legislation issue. Because when you read through our treaty from the beginning, it's a legislation issue.
Is it really legislation?
Yeah, I'm going to show you why. I'm going to tell you why.
Carrying on since he was giving information. Thank you, sir.
Thank
you for interjection.
Let's do this. Let's Mr. Tegeka, you finish that point. Let's come to why whether it really is a legislation
issue.
Yes.
Can I?
Let Mr. Tegeka finish his point. We're going to come to.
Yes, it is a problem that customs union has not been respected, and indeed the common market, because those are the major ones. Now, customs union. Last time I was looking at the Minister for East Africa here in Uganda, trying to those border posts, interacting with the traders and what the problems we are facing. This is what we are supposed to do to make sure we counter what bottlenecks are on those border posts. Apparently, most of these countries in their different assemblies, national parliaments, they are making laws. But I think there has been a little concern to look at both laws, how they prevail, juxtapose them and get the correct way. That's why today it is easy to sneak a country into Uganda through Southern Sudan. Because the tariffs, the duties paid on it are low.
Earlier on, you referred to the way the standards body is doing it.
Yeah.
Working in unison with the ones, in the other member countries. Is this something that you believe that the revenue authorities should also be doing?
Exactly. That's what I thought. Not revenue, actually parliaments, because actual revenue implements what the parliament has passed. Yeah, parliaments of these countries must coordinate. There was supposed to be in that political federation, then we know we are making laws that are uniform for all of us. But in an event where these laws have not yet been to that level, we must accept, as we have East African Parliament. We sit as members from this different, we all plan. We must accept and coordinate with the national parliaments. Ugandan members of parliament in Yala coordinate with the parliament in Uganda. So that you keep looking at the laws, how they are being crafted, look at the bills which have been passed, compare them, they call it juxtapose them. And then at the end of the day, you have a common conclusion that suits for the whole region.
I think we are hoping, we are picking issues here and there. But you see, we had decided to look at the 4 pillars. What have we achieved? What has not worked?
Yes.
And as saying that for the customs union, I think it's a legislation issue. Why? Because I oftentimes try to benchmark with the EU. With the EU, if you contravene their statutory instruments, there are dire consequences, there are penalties that you're going to face. It is not the case with the East African community. I'll give you an example. Rwanda closed the border for close to 2 years. Some young men took Rwanda to court and they won the case. What were the penalties? Nothing. I think we need to think of amending our treaty, because there seems to be some gaps. You're a lawyer.
Yes,
in the law you call it lacunas.
Lacunas, yes.
We need to deal with those, with the customs union.
But there's got to be interest from the countries to actually deal with those issues. Because
I totally agree with you.
There's the so-called race to the bottom, where, yes, I want to attract.
Yes.
And therefore, will I accept to put something in the law that will not accept me to do that? Will not give me that advantage.
You have spoken well. You have spoken well. When you read through the treaty, there's a lot of lenience. That lenience, I think, was deliberate, so that you can attract as many members as possible. Because if you seem to be harsh, then you're going to keep away certain people. But the community has grown. We are 7. Somalia wants to come on board. Number 8. I'm told Sudan wants to join. Ethiopia wants to join. I think now we need to, I don't know, should I call it crack the whip? We need to crack the whip. But
most likely the logic is going to be when you come in first and then we can crack the whip. Because it looks like there is a number in terms of population and land size that we want to achieve,
then
we're
crack the whip.
precisely.
Let's call
But
it
we're,
the market.
but we're doing
looking
well.
at the
But I
markets.
wanted to look at the second pillar also, and we analyze it and we see how it has performed.
Yes,
If
the
you allow
common,
me just a
the
few
common
minutes.
market.
The common market.
And
just allow me a few minutes.
that
and
one
let's-
has been quite problematic.
Yes, but let's try
I
to
think
analyze it also.
Before you cross the common market, for me, there is that simple advice that we have to put across. That the UN-based strategy, we need to accept that these border posts must be monitored by the member states under their commitment levels. If Uganda is able, you saw last time when we had the fish scam here from Kenya to Uganda. Hey, why is it when we pass our fish here is a problem? You come and it was just about basically creating a situation, putting these committees and bringing them into an understanding that there was something wrong, but which we don't have. And under that, I've said we shall not achieve much unless we have tribunals. Because today, when you
Tribunals
get tribunals
under which
under the East
arrangement?
African community, we must, like ECOWAS in West Africa has a tribunal that if you have cases, a misunderstanding with the member states, problems where you have business people have been deterred from entering the other border or have been failed, given conditions which are not necessary, those bottlenecks we are talking about, the tariff barriers, right? The tribunal swings in and averts these problems. But now, here in East Africa, we have to first go to the East African Court of Justice. Mr. Iguma, how many times have you wanted to go to court? Even my brother have been to court. You know how much problems they have.
A tribunal is more or less
the tribunal is more
or less a
systematic. It is a committee. It is a commitment that if we have cases like the Rwanda you're speaking, let the tribunal swing in. Apart from, instead of you thinking of going to Angola to solve your problems. The East African Committee must have come in, swung in with the tribunal, decided. And you know, international relations, there are so many things that have been looked at which can solve these conflict resolution. Yeah? Dialoguing,
All right.
and all this.
We probably will come to that issue when we come to political federation, because there's the issue of sovereignty and how much sovereignty countries are willing to cede, in these different, the aspects. But yes, on the common market.
On the common market signed in 2010, it has some rights and freedoms. When you read the Common Market Protocol, it talks about the right of establishment, that you can go and get established in any of the East African countries, the right of residence. Then it has the liberties, the free movement of, all the factors of production, the free movement of labor and all that. Beautifully stated. Question is, okay, before I look at the negatives, let me acknowledge the positives. It has worked to some extent, because I was checking the records, and for Uganda, for example, we earn more than $400 million from Kenya trade, and that is good. So there's been some benefits. Some benefits are there. We should accept that some benefits have been, realized. But there are bottlenecks. Bottlenecks, why, for example, we saw Kenya banning our milk. Today we cannot sell our sugar to Tanzania. Actually, we have an excess of more than 400,000 metric tons of sugar, which you can't even sell to Kenya, because Kenya gave us a limit. We can sell to them sugar, but up to a certain limit. We can't go beyond that limit. It's purely protectionism. There's been a lot of protectionism. Why? Because we are producing the same products. We have milk in Uganda, Kenya has milk. And Uganda has a comparative advantage on some of these products. When our milk crosses the border and goes to Kenya, it's much cheaper than the Kenyan milk. So they're trying to be protective to their markets. So they're saying, no, your milk has issues. You import powdered milk from Brazil, then you sell it to us cheaply, which is not true. Same allegations were made by Tanzania, that, we import sugar from Brazil, rebrand it here and sell it to Tanzania at, a lower cost, but which is not true. The issue, like I said earlier, is protectionism. How do we deal with that protectionism? We need to identify where each country has a comparative advantage. If Uganda has, and it is true that Uganda has a comparative advantage on products that are agricultural. Why? Our land is fertile. We don't talk about fertilizers like it is the case in Kenya. So our cost of production when it comes to agriculture is much lower than the rest of the countries. I think our sister nations should accept that if we have a comparative advantage on certain commodities, then we should be allowed to handle that niche.
All right.
That should be the solution when it comes to the common market protocol.
On the common market protocol and, you know, the free movement of these factors of production.
Yes.
Where is this information supposed to be found? Because you will call, you know, offices, institutions that are supposed to be custodians of some of this information. And depending on which officer you get on the phone, you get a varying answer. For example, for the last 2 weeks, I've been trying to receive an answer to a very simple question. Does a Kenyan working in Uganda need a work permit?
They don't.
Well,
ideally, that's the ideal situation.
Yes, depending on who I have gotten on the phone,
yes,
I have received a different answer. Now, if people who are working in government offices do not have the information on, you know, the application of the common market protocol that was signed, you know, this is now almost more than 10 years ago,
yes,
then what is being implemented and what can we do, Mr. Ategeka, to make sure that these things actually work for the people? And remember, we keep saying this is a people-centered community.
Not yet.
Yeah,
not yet.
Thank you. Yeah. But the way, you know, when we are coming into this and seeking these positions, we have also seen a lot of things. I've moved in all these East African countries doing work with East African Recyclers Federation and then the Uganda Plastic Sector Federation, which are recycling. But, you know, the different problems are indeed different. And it is because people have totally refused to respect what is there. You can think of trying to regulate again and again, but first of all, they are prescribed protocols signed by member states. Congo has just entered and signed these protocols, how they will work. Somalia will come before we start getting pirates and Al-Shabaab here. We expect them to respect the protocols. But when it comes to implementation of these protocols, there is laxity, failure to follow up, and up today, I said, and I repeat it, Rebecca Kadaga, the Minister of East African Affairs, that is in Uganda, first Prime Minister. What she did is exactly what the legislation, what the other people charged with duties within the East African community. If East African community has different structures, operational structures, but you wonder and ask yourself, how far have they gone with insisting and making sure these protocols work for the people? There's laxity in that. It's now time to wake up. If we're given these opportunities, we're going to the East African Parliament. Let's be mindful of what is happening at these border posts. Do not allow a country like the neighbor to stop and close the border in a community where you're still an active member.
Is there a way in which one country can stop another country in the East African
the system
context?
must. The protocol stops that. If you do that, then they suspend you.
Now that suspension, that's why. Just one second.
Can I first finish?
But it's in relation to that. Yes.
That suspension is what I was alluding to earlier. It is not stated in the treaty. You won't open that treaty anyway, and it is stipulating that, you know, if so and so closes the border, suspend them. It is not in the treaty. That's the lacuna I was telling you. That is in our.
But what should be done, Mister? If you have an institution which is working, you have a summit, yeah. You have a council minister. You mean the presidents cannot come together and take a decision? Suspension does not come from the book, from what's stipulated in the law, but the member states to come and say, no, as member states, we agree that this country has refused to cooperate, we put a suspension on it accordingly.
But based on what? Because
Based on the failure to cooperate. Failure to
no,
cooperate with the
well, just to understand, for there to be, for you to pull out a sanction, it's got to be based on a law, a legislation of some sort. And in certain instances, you even go beyond that and have rules, that, operationalize whatever, law protocol you have come up with. In this case, we don't have them. And so if the member states, if the, the summit or the Council of Ministers came together and made that decision, aren't they opening up for liability?
You're only trying to expose the current leadership. No. It meaning that they have not looked at a point whereby a country can be penalized for disobedience. Is it what you're trying to say, Mr.?
Let me say something. You have spoken well. Actually, after here, I should go and buy you a cup of cappuccino. You have spoken well. You see, for any integration, for any region to be integrated, and for that integration to thrive, there must be an instrument, a guiding instrument. When we talk about East Africa, the guiding instrument is the treaty. Now, the treaty is silent on a number of things. For example, I tried to open the treaty and peruse through it and see whether it is talking about, like if a member country closes the border, what is done. That information is not there.
I am very worried.
Again, I love benchmarking with the EU because EU is a very successful confederation. They don't intend to become a federation. They intend to stay as a confederation, but they are a success. Why? Belgium today cannot close its borders to any of the European countries, or any of the European countries cannot close its borders, because that comes with dire consequences. Unless if you choose to opt out.
They decided to give you one visa.
A Schengen visa.
Yes.
And it will take you throughout all the countries. And nobody is going to deny you entry. Okay? You cannot contravene their instrument. Why? Because the consequences are dire. Unless you choose to quit, like we saw Britain do it.
Okay. Well,
but that's not the case with East Africa.
Yes.
And those are the things, because I began by telling you that it is a legislation issue. We should go back to the treaty. This treaty has survived for how many years? 20-something, 22, more than 20 years. I mean, we need to modify it. If we have amended our Ugandan constitution, if Kenya has come up with a new constitution 2010, why not,
but you see, what's happening instead is we are coming up with, smaller groups within, and we call these the willing and the unwilling and what
That's
have
the
you.
problem.
Because to travel to Tanzania today, you cannot use your ID.
No.
But to travel to Kenya, you can use your national ID. Even when we came to implementation of the COVID-19, the measures.
We're working in silos.
It was different.
We're working in silos.
Precisely.
Yes.
And you had to find out in the other country, what do I need?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
certain
Actually, you've raised another good issue. Now, there should be, I don't know, there should be a harmonized stand on some of the things. Like the way we addressed COVID, we should have had a harmonized stand as East Africa. We should have had standard operating procedures that cut across the entire region. But we saw countries working in isolation, working in silos.
Right.
Uganda doing it its own way. Tanzania doing it.
Gentlemen, there are two more pillars. But then,
I wanted to correct I want to correct it on the issue of treaty. And it should not be taken serious that if a member state fails to cooperate in as expected by what has been prescribed by the protocols, that it can go scot-free. It's just lack of the willingness, that failure to come up.
No, it can go scot-free. Why? I'll give you examples.
Let's first hear him.
Always listen, because I've listened to you. Try to respect your time. It's because they have mandates. These countries have been given mandates in that category, that if you fail to protect the mandates which have been prescribed in the treaty, it means that you can be disowned, or a sitting council, council for presidents, can come up and say no, this country for now shall not be benefiting from the privileges of the East African community. That is one way to do it.
When did
Secondly, I would have to say that even then, I said earlier on, you're exposing some of our members. It means there has been lack, that willingness of East African Parliament, because that is the custodian of the laws of this region. They should have put a very strong law that actually puts you at bay. That even when you are stopped, you should not even cross the other border post to Tanzania to look for food. You should not look for until you come into proper mindset that you're respecting the laws of the region. It should not be understood, and I want to dismiss this one on air, that a country can misbehave and go scot-free.
Okay.
No.
So what you're suggesting is that there's an amendment to that effect.
There should be an amendment,
yes,
in much more stronger.
Which is an agreement that at the which you know, to the point that at the moment, you know, the instruments as they are,
they are weak. They are weak now, but there's still a procedure of punishing a misbehavior country or state.
All right, Mr. Mivule.
I think that's not true. He was asking that, you know, can a country contravene the treaty and go scot-free? My answer is yes, and I can give you examples.
Well, because of what we have seen.
Rwanda,
the willingness.
Listen, Rwanda closed the border for 2 years. It went scot-free.
Why?
Listen, Tanzania banned our sugar, which again contravenes the Common Market Protocol. It has gone scot-free.
Why?
And I can give you numerous examples. And I've given you the answer. I've given you the reason. The reason is...
How come you don't reach the examples of Kenya?
so many things
the
have happened.
And the rejecting.
so many things.
The eastern border.
Yes, and sometimes we have resorted to Juakali methods. If Kenya is banning our maize, then we should also ban this and that. That doesn't work. Things don't work like that. But we are still a growing integration. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Depending on the representatives, the Ategekas that are going to Yala, these are legislation issues. Like I said earlier, we were lenient in 1999-2000 when we signed the first treaty. Right. We should crack the whip as we get more members on board.
Gentlemen, when you look at the process right now and you hear the things that the aspirants, soon to be, you know, the candidates are proposing, and what they proposed previously, are these things that, you know, we actually are planning to do?
I think.
Okay.
I think.
Is that question posed to
yes, well, we're both going to respond.
Let it also come.
Yes, Mr. Tegeka.
I think we must say the commitment level is very important. He was there.
Not on the commitment here, because okay, let me tell you where
the commitment level.
No, let me tell you where this comes from. Earlier on, Mr. Mivule did refer to two issues that had been, you know, mentioned in being responsible for the community, you know, collapsing. For the last 3 rounds of you know, elections for Iyala, the candidates have talked about those very same issues, done 5 years, 10 years, and not solved those issues, only for them to be the same issues that come the next time round. And so I will not even be surprised to hear the very same things said by these candidates. So are these things that we actually are taking serious and would like to solve in order for the community to go to the next level?
I'm thinking this, the same way I've told you. There's a lack of that commitment, devotion. Because if the members can spot where the problems are...
Where's the lack of commitment from?
You are taking me to choosing people, but that's the case. That's the case.
Because without identifying where the lack of commitment is coming from...
The parliament, the East African Parliament itself, where we're going. And that's why I've told Mr. Mivule to continue to talk to our brothers that we want the best brains in that parliament. Let's talk about it.
You can also say it.
He should also talk it on air. He should talk on air. Don't start selecting. You forget, what do you call it? You talked of selection and what? The kind of brain you are putting in this parliament will matter and will define the future of East African integration. I should even stop there. Let me stop there, because if I stop there, I'm going to step on some people's toes.
I just you'll go and ask for the vote. Yes.
Let me compliment. For any organization, for example, if I look at Seetv, you must have a strategic plan. And that strategic plan, you have certain strategic objectives. So if anybody comes with a proposal that is not in line with your strategic plan, they would just be lying. That would simply be deception. Now, this is what is happening. East African community has a strategic plan. That strategic plan is hinged on the 4 pillars we're discussing. The Customs Union, Common Market, Monetary Union, and the Political Federation. But I have seen some of my colleagues proposing things that are not aligned to those strategic pillars. Now, that is total deception. They are either doing it deliberately, or they are doing it out of ignorance. I'll raise a few issues. I'll raise.
How, apart from in the boardrooms and in the big meetings,
yes,
how much have these pillars actually driven what the East African community is doing?
They have, because we have already discussed the Customs Union, the Common Market. We have seen the few benefits that we've had.
And wanted to jump to others without completing, some of the pillars, without some of the countries coming on board fully. Sincerely speaking, it seems like this is an agenda for some and not for others.
But you see, you cannot have it perfect 100%. If the Customs Union is respected to maybe an extent of 80%, we can move forward. If the Common Market is respected to an extent of around 80%, we can move forward. The perfection can come later. Actually, I'm like someone who studied management. They tell us in management that one of the issues that drag us is perfectionism, trying to perfect everything. If we try to perfect these pillars, we shall end nowhere. We can move, and at some stage it's a back and forth. We can come back and perfect a few issues that we have. If there are gaps in the treaty, we come and address them. But let me go back to the issue I was raising. I've seen my colleagues promise things which are ideally beautiful, but they are not in line with the strategic plan of the community. They are not in line with the 4. If, for example, someone talks about climate change, it sounds nice, but where does it fall in the 4? It doesn't. I don't want to mention what my brother has been promising voters. You think I'm accusing him. But you see, he's competent in that area of recycling, and you are saying, we shall get into recycling, I will donate this and that, recycling machines and what. That is a good thing. But where does it fall in the 4 pillars? Yes. He was talking about the ghetto youth. That's a very good program. I'm just saying, I'm just giving those as just examples. They are very beautiful, but where do they fall? If they do not, now let me tell you something. Uganda, we have Vision 2040, you're aware. And it was split into a number of national development plans. I think there are 5. There are 5 or 6 of them.
On the 3rd.
We are currently on the 3rd. And under the NDP3, we have around 18 programs. If you're a politician out there and you're in the community proposing something that is not aligned to those 18 programs in the NDP3, you're deceiving.
But unfortunately, just a second, I'm going to come there. And unfortunately, you say if you're a politician and what you're saying is not aligned to that, the very same members of parliament promise those things and are in parliament. Those members of parliament, if you ask them the East African community and the strategic plan of the East African community, you will be shocked at what responses you will get. Now, same people to whom you expect the candidates to go and promise in line with a strategy that they are not really aware about. So at the end of the day, aren't you expecting more than can actually be delivered?
Now, let me first look at it from a constituency level. And they even promise things that are not within their mandate.
Yes. Yes, and usually they say it's because it is what the electorate.
Yes.
Yes.
I think the issue there, I'm beginning at a constituency level. The problem with a constituency is the civic competence. Have we educated our people? about the roles of an MP because there are simply 4.
Yes.
And we know them according to Article 79.
But when it comes to East African community,
I'm getting
our
there.
MPs are expected to know these
I'm doing a bottom
yes,
up. I'm doing a bottom up. I'm beginning from the constituency. And that's why we have a high turnover. Because our MPs, our dear MPs, are accused of things that are not within their mandate. Okay? Now, let me take it a little
and they'll be
higher.
assessed based on things that are outside of the role of an MP.
Exactly. Now, let me raise it higher to the MP level. We expect our MPs to know these things, the 4 pillars, this and that. But we shouldn't take that for granted. Have we taken time? But I must appreciate there is a gentleman, is my OB, Honorable Kateshumba Dixon, started the platform. I think it's called Parliamentary something on East Africa. But there's also a committee on affairs.
That was
I think
roles.
They've done some work.
Roles.
They've done an induction. There was an induction in Munyonyo. You're aware. There's an induction. They invited people.
A whole year late, but yes.
Yes. So that's a step in the right direction. They are doing well, but more has to be done. Actually, I'm thinking of, I don't know, starting, I don't know whether I should call it a think tank or a forum, or I'm thinking of an appropriate name. Which forum we can use to educate not only our political leaders, but the grassroots. Go to my village in Kagando and educate the people about the benefits of integration. It should come out soon. Expect that. As a regional integration activist, that is one of the things I'm thinking about.
All right, Mr. Tegeka, and now I've noticed our time, and we have to, get to a solution.
But we have not talked about the third and the father.
Yes, tell my brother, thank you for that analysis that actually you have to be knowing your roles as an MP, as a leader, as whatever, and you serve in that direction. That's what fails most societies. Because sometimes today you have seen some MPs getting out of bounds by an ambulance. Is he supposed to buy an ambulance? Is it anywhere indicated in their books, in the roles that they're supposed to serve? No. You see an MP coming out to reach at a health center. I'm giving you this scan. I'm donating you this. I'm donating this mama kits. Is it in their roles? No.
If you don't do that, I will do it.
No. Really, sincerely speaking, is that when you're a leader, you're a leader. You're looked at a very different way. And in business, where we have been, there's that piece they call the corporate social responsibility. Giving back to the community. If you have been in an industry, you're working within Nakawa, you should not have mothers suffering around there. You can contribute something for them, for their livelihood. If you have an MP from somewhere, you know the problems of your society. You also contribute differently and support all 100%. You are catered for in one way or the other. You feel you can sacrifice something for them. And that's what keeps you there. Never fear to contribute out of the way. This is a young man who walks from Ntinda to Nakawa without standing behind to see behind. Why? That is not the system. You must go divert and looking at what can you do with these communities. When I tell you recycling is one of the greatest science of the world. The world has been consumed by plastics. Plastic are part of us. I can see you have many here. You have a pen of plastic. Your wife at home has hair made of plastic. You have polyester. Where do these plastics end? In the environment. We allow them to accumulate in the environment and have it.
But the point he makes here,
that you are not supposed to think climate change.
No, the point he makes here is that the East African community in this new lease came up with its pillars. True. The strategy that is going to be followed in order for the community to deliver on particular things. And whereas some of these things look good, they do not fit in that strategy.
Into the framework.
Perfect. You've spoken
now,
well.
when you are vying for a position that is, a position that falls within the structure of that community, it should follow the strategy, because that is what you have promised will be delivered to the East Africans. Now, when our attention goes to these shiny things, which are not bad,
they are good, yes.
They are good things. They are not in line with what
with
you
the
said
mission
you will
and
deliver
objectives
for the
They are
East
not
Africans.
in line with the reason why we chose to integrate.
But you know, you should also be, I call the word daft, as a leader, to accept these small corporate social responsibilities you are doing to divert you from the main objectives. All can be done at the same time. Let me finish because you have your time. You were a leader. You are a solution finder. A leader is not someone who goes there and you move like a sheep that I'm going to do this. No.
Okay,
let me finish this, Iguma.
No.
Let me finish my articulation.
It's exactly in relation to that.
Yes.
So, for example, climate change, recycling of plastics. How do you start to bring this up?
How do you align that
Climate, by the way, must be given responsibility and very serious priority in this world. Not talk about East Africa alone. There's a lot of damage that has happened with the environment.
Yes, that's
that
a
has led
given.
to climate,
yes.
And many institutions, and even our own institutions of legislation must be putting laws. Every other time we must change laws to make sure.
If I may ask,
yes,
shouldn't this just be something for our legislature here, the Ugandan parliament?
No. We're talking about the region.
Can I compliment?
Because I used to have a law which I was following with East African Parliament. It was about waste management. How can we do waste management? I even went to Arusha and interacted with that. It came to Rwanda, Kigali, because they have those different weeks with parliaments to different countries. I followed them, and they were talking about waste management for them with my colleagues. We went and presented to them. Why do you think they were going into this? Because it is still a community issue, a society issue, whereby countries within can follow the same procedure, same trends to manage their problems.
Gentlemen, now it's a quick race against time. Could we just very briefly give our thoughts on the last two, being the monetary union and the political federation? And I will start with you, Mr. Ategeka, very briefly.
Yes, first of all, I want to talk about the common currency is a very good thing if we can achieve it, because looking at our different economies.
For the monetary union, it's mainly the common currency that it is the bullseye.
Yeah, it's also that can bring us together and start moving at the same pace. Because if you're looking at the weakest shilling, which is Uganda today, and Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, the franc, we have a difference. And then bring them together will not be easy. You cannot just merge them before how you can make to match the same. I have been welcoming this East African bank thing, although they are trying to push it to the part of it's being negotiated out of Uganda, but this was our chance as Uganda to have it. Then we can start also controlling this. The East African currency can come in, that monetary uniform, the purchase capacity of all these commodities in different markets. Right. It affects it all if we don't put them on the same level. And I've still told you it's very hard to achieve.
Did I just hear you right? Do you suggest that the physical presence of the headquarters of the East African bank being in Uganda will mean that Uganda will have certain influence on the way the bank is run?
It's not about the influence as a country, but it's part of being in the region.
Okay.
First of all, you have seen that.
No, your submission seemed to,
It's clear, but you see, Tanzania almost has everything for East African institutions. And now they are still suggesting to have it there.
Okay, you're talking about the distribution of the different...
distribution of these resources,
yes,
the equitability.
Thank you, Iguma. Now, talking about the monetary union, the ultimate objective is to have a common currency. Why should we be interested in having a common currency? One, I'll give you a quick example. That if you're in Uganda with your 1 million shillings and you go to Tanzania, and you exchange that money, Tanzanian shilling. And from Tanzania, you move to Kenya, Kenyan shilling. And you come back to Uganda, if you left with 1 million, by the time you come back, you have 6,000. You have lost 40%.
Yet you haven't purchased anything.
You haven't purchased, just
yes.
moving within the region and extending. Let me submit. You have lost 40% of the money, just moving within the region. Now, that's why we should think of having a currency. But it's not that easy. Certain things have to be done to achieve the common currency. There must be a lot of harmonization. I usually tell people that if we are to have a common currency in East Africa, there should be a harmonization of our and monetary policies. Why? Because the way we are now, our currencies have different values. Right. The only thing we can do to have the same value is that harmonization. When I talk about the fiscal policies, policies to do with budgeting, government expenditures, there should be some harmonization.
Well, we decided to read our budgets on the same day.
Issues to do with our revenue, taxation, there should be that harmonization. When we go to the monetary policies, where do we borrow as a region? Do we do domestic borrowing? Do we borrow from external sources? And if we are to borrow from external sources, what kind of loans do we go for? Do we go for concessional loans? Do we go for commercial? So there should be that harmonization. If that harmonization, then it would be a waste of time. Right. Now, and we are not dealing with what I call the software issue. We are instead dealing with the hardware issues. Where should the East Africa be? For me, that's not an issue. And I hope I won't offend anybody. Because as long as the central bank is in East Africa, remember where I started? That strong sense of nationalism. Tanzanian, Kenyan. No. As long as the central bank is in East Africa, no problem. But we need to address the software issues first, the policies. That's only when we can achieve a common currency. Right. If that is not addressed, we would just be lying ourselves.
Mr. Tegeka, very briefly on the political federation.
Political federation, we welcome it still, but I don't know how the criteria you can achieve it, although our political systems are very different. The way maybe Uganda, Rwanda, okay, Tanzania community, Kenya 2-term limits, and then Burundi, how they fall, I don't know if they go which one each other term. So it's all about harmonizing everything.
Is it achievable or should
it's hard.
I need to cut you because of time. Is it achievable or should we go the EU way?
It is achievable, but in my that it's very paramount that you should eat the end. We can start with the confederation. With the confederation, every country retains its sovereignty, but you have common market, common everything. Yes. But later, there's a statement that President Museveni made in Munyonyo, and he said that would be comfortable with the confederation. We economically, but remain as with our sovereignties as different states. But when you look at our strategy talks about two things: prosperity and strategic security. If we are to achieve strategic security, there should be that political federation. The EU can afford, for each country to maintain its sovereignty. Why? Because they have other formations. NATO, right. They have other formations. Which formations we do not have here in Africa?
Considering that we are bringing on relatively troubled countries when it comes to...
We can pacify them. What's hard with pacifying Somalia?
That's what I'm saying. It's easier to do when you have...
When you're together.
Precisely.
When you're working together.
But if you're doing the thing
But let me say this. President Amin made a statement and said that he did. And Uganda did it. Why can't Tanzania did
it also?
Now, let me also say something before we close. If the USA... Because when you talk about the USA, people think it is a single country. No, these are 50 different countries working together. They agreed to federate. When you look at Russia, there are actually 85 states working together. It was actually bigger with the USSR. If these people did it, why can't we did it also?
We can do it. He's given us his parting shot, Mr. Tegeka. And I hope I can call you Honorable Tegeka very soon. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. And our viewers, you have sustained this discussion. It's been a long one, of course. And I'm sure you have had a different taste of what we have had to discuss tonight. Thank you so much. And our dear MPs for her tuned up to this television. We request for your support. We request for your, I am calling it intellectual generosity. in a matter of Iyala, so that we can have the best brain in the Arusha Parliament, so that our bargaining force as Uganda, bargaining power, can start lifting high. That's why over today and many times we have seen Uganda coming in the integration process. But if we can put the right brains there, push for the good of our people, we shall be the best country in this region. Thank you so much. We are here committed for the East African and deepening integration. Thank you. Have a good night.
Our guests, Mr. Moses Ategeka and Mr. Ronald Emivule.
Can I say something in a minute?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
In
30
a minute.
seconds.
Two things that we must address as a region. Let's see people in the integration process. Let's educate them. Let's make use of the media houses. Let me say this in 30 seconds. Our legislative assembly meets in Arusha. About if they consider doing a rotation sitting, and they sit in different countries, and after their 2 weeks of engagement, they take maybe another 2 weeks to hold stakeholder engagement meetings, reach out to the people, reach out to the populace, and educate them about the benefits of integration. That is
all right. They actually do the rotation, but
yes,
yes, you are suggesting.
I've been in one in Rwanda.
We have to end here.
And in Kenya.
Yeah, but there are aspects that he is, suggesting that they add to those rotations, which
they
would
need
be
to insist on them.
Very beneficial. And I'm glad that you brought us that up, because at the end of the day, the East African community is nothing without the East African people.
Exactly.
The people of East Africa, we should become more interested in what's happening with the community. At this time, our parliaments are going to be electing our representatives to the East African Legislative Assembly. We cannot let these processes go without us. So get involved in whatever way you can. From me and our guests for tonight, it's a good night. God bless you. But continue to watch the quality programming here on Seetv. Until next week when we return. Good night. Don't